This is 5 on your side at 6. Focused on you.
Right now, a police officer is fighting for life after a protest in Ferguson turned violent. It happened after hours of peaceful protests, marking 10 years since Michael Brown's death. Good evening, I'm Brent Solomon. Tonight we can confirm multiple officers were hurt. And now 5 people are facing multiple charges. Among those charges, Elijah Gant of East St. Louis. He's accused of assaulting an officer who is now in critical condition. He's being held on a $500,000 cash-only bond. We have team coverage for you tonight. Annie Krall is getting community reaction. But first, Travis Cummings spoke with the Ferguson police chief, who isn't mincing words. Fill us in, Travis.
Brent, intense overnight and this afternoon. Right now, we know there's one officer with a severe brain injury in the hospital. Chief Troy Doyle said during a press conference this afternoon, another officer suffered an ankle injury and a third has some abrasions to the leg.
10 years later, I got an officer fighting for his life. It's enough, and I'm done with it.
Ferguson Police Chief Troy Doyle emotional as he addresses a demonstration that turned destructive overnight outside the department on Friday. The same day Michael Brown was killed by a Ferguson police officer 10 years ago.
We allowed the protesters to block our streets out here. Not only did we allow the protesters to block our street, we even provided a car on the north end and on the south end, so the protesters couldn't get hit by vehicles.
But then the chief says protesters started to shake and break the department's fence.
It was at that time I sent out an arrest team to make an arrest for destruction of property.
3 officers were injured, one with severe brain damage. Police say they even stepped in to help one demonstrator with a seizure. Residents and others have their own recollection of the night.
Never was there an order issued that it was an unlawful assembly. So police came out, rushed into a crowd, panicked, it was melee. So I would definitely put that the onus on the injuries that happened last night was on the police department.
One of the people that did get detained, when she went up with her camera, with her phone, she got pushed back. I got it on film. That agitated the situation.
Doyle maintains they've done the work to be better.
Everything that the activist community has advocated for, as far as body-worn cameras, implicit bias training, crisis intervention training, all this stuff, we have done all of this. What are we protesting?
The chief wants the people his officers work for to show them and this community's history respect.
We want people to peacefully protest, but we damn sure ain't gonna allow you to destroy this city, and we ain't gonna allow you to hurt none of these police officers.
St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney Wesley Bell was also at today's press conference. He said a few things that stood out. The first, he said that he wants demonstrators to cool the temperature. He also says he sends his thoughts and prayers to the family of the officer injured. Brent.
All right, Travis, thank you. Business owners in Ferguson are now reacting to last night's protests. Annie Krall joins us in the newsroom to continue our team coverage.
Brent, business owners tell us today they felt a call to action to try to elevate the Ferguson area after Michael Brown Jr.'s death. One owner says the protesters he met last night were there to reflect and remember Brown a decade later. Maurice King is the owner of Hive Cafe, which has been open for a little more than a year and a half. Growing up nearby, he recognized an opportunity to rebuild the community in 2020, supporting the Ferguson Strong chalk drawings right outside his doorstep on South Florissant last night. King and his family were actually celebrating the premiere of a documentary, 13 Days in Ferguson, on Friday night around 11 o'clock, saying the peaceful protesters were out all night, amplifying it's a community he's prepared to keep protecting.
Ferguson as a whole is fighting against a negative image that Mike Brown left. And I think that South Florissant, which is downtown Ferguson, is a great representation of that diversity that's needed, you know, and helping grow the community.
King went on to say that, quote, there can always be 1 or 2 bad apples in a bunch when it comes to last night's protests, but the individuals that came into his restaurant, ate and watched the documentary, they had these deep conversations trying to combat police brutality, especially during an important weekend like this. Brent?
All right, Annie, thank you. That local filmmaker that you heard from earlier has worked over the last decade to tell the story of Ferguson in a powerful way. 10 years ago, Chris Phillips was starting his career while living in the Canfield Apartments, where Michael Brown was shot. By the second day of protests, Phillips picked up his gear and never put it down. He created an award-winning documentary called Ferguson 365. He's also become a trusted voice when it comes to systemic racism. He works with big brands and is a source for national news outlets. He now covers racial tension and events all around the country. But Ferguson is where it all began for him.
It's been, a blessing, but it's also, there's ups and downs to it. I've been fortunate enough to be profiled by the Washington Post and Al Jazeera and these different outlets and lend my voice to the conversation. Just important because Ferguson is really a microcosm of a national epidemic and problem. And so that's what compelled me.
Michael Brown's death changed Ferguson forever. Now all eyes focus on what's next for the community to move forward. Joshua Ray Davis with Best Insurance Agency has kept his business on West Florissant. While he's welcomed new neighbors like the Urban League's Empowerment Center, Davis wants more grocery stores and restaurants to come in. People in the community also want more jobs and opportunities. Davis said he's committed to stay here and he's ready to see his community thrive.
Because I know what was and I know what can be. That's what keeps me, is the promise of a good, bright future.
You can see much more of his interview in our special Race, Listen, Learn, Live, Voices of Ferguson. It airs August 22nd at 7 p.m. The hour-long special takes a closer look at how far Ferguson has come since that day, the healing that has taken place, and the work that remains. Well, new calls for action in North County after reporting from Reuters says the EPA repeatedly shared faulty research with victims of radioactive waste. The reporting says federal officials collecting data near the Westlake landfill were flawed and outdated. The agency assigned to collect this data tells 5 on Your Side otherwise. The EPA says the data they've collected at the Westlake landfill is reliable. In a statement shared with 5 on Your Side, they say, quote, "The EPA stands by the data and reports produced as scientifically valid." Well, local advocacy group Just Moms STL tells 5 on Your Side they are disheartened by the latest reporting. They say they will be asking for meetings with EPA officials. They also say they're working with area leaders to get the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act finally passed. Well,